Hi, everyone. Welcome to our first online session for Foundations of Statistics using R. Welcome. It looks like we have about 13 or so people online. It's great to see you here and welcome. So before we kind of jump into the content, I want to talk a little bit about how we're going to communicate in this online meetup. And so just want to make sure that you kind of know how to use the GoToTraining environment. And one thing that I ask is that you just mute yourself. So there's this microphone icon that you can click. And if it turns red, that means that you're muted. And if it's not, if it's green, it means that anything that you say, or if there's a dog barking in the background, or somebody comes into your office, we'll hear it. So it'd be great if everybody could mute themselves. And if you're logging in through one or two channels, just make sure that both those channels are muted. So through your computer and your phone, for example. And before I go too much further, I really want to make sure that everybody can hear me. So if you can, please type yes in the text chat. And this is how you do that. There's a little turnbuckle here. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Jose, Benjamin, Philip, Lynn, Christian. Awesome. So I'm assuming that everybody will be able to hear me. Mehdi, thank you. So in addition to just indicating that you can hear me, when you can't hear me, if something goes out or something, just let me know in the text chat. That's your best recourse. And also, please use this text chat to ask questions as we're going along in these meetups. This is really a time for you to ask questions, and you can also ask questions verbally too. And I'll go over how to do that. But don't feel that you'll interrupt anything that's going on if you just ask a question, in the middle of kind of a discussion. The idea is there that, I can look at that question, or someone else can look at that question, and we can answer it as appropriate. So a few other things is that you have the ability to use a camera within the GoToTraining environment. So just make sure that before you use your camera that you do a little AV check, make sure your lighting's adequate, that you're comfortable with what's going to be shown in the camera. Make sure, if you're doing this from home, that the people around you are aware that you have your camera on, and that you're really comfortable with kind of what will be shown on the screen. Simple stuff that we all know, but I just like to remind you of that. So if you have a webcam, please feel free to enable it. I'll enable mine just for a moment, just so you can kind of see. You probably already know kind of what I look like because you've seen some of my teaching videos. So I'm teaching from my loft uptown right now in New York City. And for those of you that haven't necessarily jumped into the course, my name is Kristen Sosulski. I'm one of the professors for this course, Foundations of Statistics Using R. I teach the R portion of the course, and my colleague Peter Lochner teaches the statistics portion of the course. And naturally, the skills that you will learn in the R portion of the course will be built upon in the statistics portion of the course. So we kind of do this part first, and then during the second half of pre-module 1, you'll be engaging in the statistics portion of the course. Any questions so far? Now, I don't know about you, but I find it distracting to, as kind of like your professor, to have my image on the screen. If you're calling in mobile, this is probably what it looks like to you. So you lose the ability to see the slides or anything that I'm showing. So right now I'm going to go ahead and turn off my camera. But I'm going to ask that when we go through and introduce ourselves, that you put your camera on if you feel comfortable, because it would be great to put a face with a name. In terms of audio, we should definitely use it as part of this meetup because we have the ability to, and sometimes it's just easier to ask questions simply without having to kind of type them out in the text chat. So just make sure that for the time being that you're muted, and if you do want to talk, there's a few things to do. You can raise your hand, so there's a raise your hand icon You should be able to see that. And in addition to raising your hand, then I can call on you. I'll see that your hand is raised over here. There'll be a little hand raised next to your name. I'll call on you, and then you can unmute yourself and then speak at will. Okay, so that's pretty much the social rules that we'll use for this course. I have the ability to mute everyone. However, I prefer more of a democratic classroom where you're kind of in control of your own audio. So if I do hear like dogs barking in the background and babies crying, which is very common, I will mute that particular participant. Okay. All right, so today's agenda is pretty simple. We have a little less than an hour and a half together. I want to learn more about you and your experience. I want to see how you're proceeding in terms of the learning the material, how you're finding it, specifically with those lectures 1 and 2 in NYU classes. Provide a basic overview of R and give you an opportunity to practice in real time. So we'll do some practice exercises together. And then also to answer any questions that you have. So the key point of this meetup is for me to not lecture so much and for you to ask questions and practice. And I really think of myself in this role as a facilitator and as a way to help you develop your skills. Great. So in your go to training panel, there's something called materials. Can everybody see that? If you turn that turnbuckle down for materials, you'll see a few things. A brief survey, exercise 1.2 and exercise 2.2. If you click on the survey, this is what I'd like you to complete. Okay, I'm going to give everybody 5 minutes to complete the survey. The URL is also here, just in case this isn't working for you. But you should be able to access this through the materials. Click on it, and the survey will simply ask you which sessions you've reviewed for the course, what assignments you've completed. Don't be worried if you haven't completed any. That's completely fine. You've only had like less than 5 days in this course. So that's not necessarily the expectation, but some people have, right? So if you have, you're not alone. And if you haven't, you're definitely not alone. But it just gives me a little bit of a sense of how quickly people are proceeding through the content. And I want to know a little bit about your experience with R and your overall experience with programming and any questions you may have now. So you can post those in the survey. I'm going to ask that everybody do that now, and I'll give us about like 5 minutes to do that. So I've set a timer for 5 minutes that you'll see on your screen to go ahead and complete this survey. After you've done that, I will bring up the aggregated survey results, and we'll review them together as a class. For anyone who's joining right now, we're just completing the survey here. Please go to the Materials tab and go to Training, and there's something called Brief Survey. Click on that link. It should bring you to the page that you see up here. We have about 2 minutes left for folks to complete the survey. It looks like we have 8 responses so far. Okay, wonderful. So thanks so much for completing the survey. We'll go ahead and look at the responses, a summary of those responses. So I like to show this just to kind of see as a sample of the class where this group is at. So there's about 10 people here. Looks like we have about 8 responses. So 6 out of the 8, so close to 75% of the class have completed the first session. Wonderful. You should have a strong start in this course. Session 2, 3 people, and 2 people haven't started yet. So definitely get started to those 2 people, but don't also feel like you're behind. You have plenty of time. Which assignments have you completed? So great. I love that people are getting a start on assignment 1 and 2. Fabulous. And if you haven't started yet, after this session, this should give you a good foundation, at least to begin assignment 1. In terms of the group here, your prior knowledge of programming. So this is just to give everybody a sense. So we can see that one person is new to coding. We have about 6 people that have taken 1 to 3 coding classes but consider themselves novices. And then we have 1 person that knows enough to be dangerous. All right. So that's
me.
awesome. That's you. Could you tell us your name?
This is Mike Rogers.
Mike Rogers. All right. So Mike, we're going to look to you to help the rest of us along the way. Okay.
Please don't.
This is awesome. And then prior to this course, what was your experience with R? And so I also like to share this. So you can see for most of us, right? This is our first experience to R5 out of the 8, and 1 person used it a few times, and 2 people are familiar but have never used it. Okay, so this just like if you had at all any apprehension that everybody was going to be a super master coder in this class, or if you had any apprehension that everybody was going to know R except for you, I hope this puts you at ease. And if you also thought that but there is definitely a diverse set of skills in the entire program. And again, we have just a small sample here in this session, but just to give you a sense of where we're at. And then this is a question, and now these answers were not mutually exclusive. So there will be, for example, one person could pick every category. So this doesn't represent necessarily the class, but just the frequencies. And so SQL, obviously, among the others, is one of the most popular coding languages. Structured query language used for databases and querying. Very, very popular in the fields today, but also we see that in this class, as well as Python and C#, and of course things like VB for Excel and the like. A few questions that came up, and I'm looking at this for the first time. So what does R provide that's not offered in other languages, such as SQL and Python? It's a great question. So R is R and Python certainly compete in terms of for like coder market share. Look, SQL, Python, and R are the most popular languages for data science and in this field. And so having fluency in all of them is really important, right? So there's different modeling packages that are available in R that might not be available in Python. There's different types of applications you can build in either of the platforms. And so there are definitely reasons to use and to learn both. And as part of this program, you'll have not just this class, which you'll be learning R in two different formats, right? One, to learn the fundamentals, and two, to learn it in the context of applying statistical techniques and models through Peter Lochner's portion of this course. And then you'll move on, and in one of your data mining courses, you'll be using R to build a series of predictive models and the like. And also in the data visualization course, which I teach, you'll also be using R to visualize data in addition to other tools. But just so you have a sense that this is not just like you learn it once and then you'll never use it again. It will be something that you'll develop your fluency in. And a lot of times these skills are very transferable from like Python to R and different coding languages. And so having anybody who's new to coding, having a foundation in one language will certainly allow you to learn a second one more easily. Just like, you can think of a foreign language, right? So, if you know Spanish, it might be easier to learn, French or Italian or vice versa. Okay. So, none at this time is the second question. Wonderful, right? It's too early. It's only like day 5 in the course. What will be used for comparison to Python and SQL? I've heard it's more for research education. Well, I mean, if you've watched kind of the videos, I've given some examples about how major companies use R in their practice. And so that might be a little bit of a misnomer that it's just used in academia, but it is there are some considerations when we're working with big data and speed and the like for the language choice. Great teaching materials thus far. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Was there a question? All right. If there is, feel free to ask. So I hope this was just helpful to get a sense of who's here, and we'll do a little bit more of that. So I just wanted to give you a little sense about me. So you see these icons on the screen representing different universities. So I actually went to Stern as an undergraduate. I studied information systems, the very department that I teach in, and many of the colleagues from the MSBA program are affiliated with. Thereafter, I was doing some consulting in addition to taking a job at this kind of education startup within Columbia University. It was called the Columbia Center for New Media Teaching and Learning. And I worked there to develop pretty robust educational software applications that were specifically designed to help students learn rather than kind of like administrate learning, like a learning management system. Wouldn't be something like that. It'd be more like things like simulations and immersive experiences. And so I was doing that from 99 to about 2005, simultaneously getting my doctorate at Columbia in an area called like learning science and educational technology. And then I went on to run a set of online programs at NYU and joined Stern thereafter as a faculty in 2011. So I've been at Stern for quite a bit. And so I like to just show this diagram because I feel like it's just like a full circle. And as part of my practice, I regularly consult in areas of training and consultations around the visualization of data for learning analytics, for business, for economics. If you want to connect with me in LinkedIn, feel free, or Twitter. I'm at Sosulski. I'm pretty active on both those platforms. And these are the hashtags that I usually use. Anything that goes with visualization, I use the hashtag becoming visual, and anything with statistics in R is R stats. And these are this one's a pretty common one in the field. This is my own hashtag that I've made up, which is related to my book that just came out. So I just wanted to share with you a little bit about kind of some of the other work that I do. So this is kind of a couple years in the making, but coming up with a way to make the business case for why visualization is such a powerful medium. And you'll learn a lot more about this when you take the data visualization course with me in Shanghai, which I believe happens in October. So that will be exciting. And we'll use a variety of tools, but there are also case studies from practitioners about how they use analytics and visualization in their practice to, persuade, to analyze, to communicate, and to provide evidence of different data findings and phenomena. So that's what this book's about. And what I like to do now is just hear about you and we won't do this every time, but since it's the first time that we're all together, I love to learn a little bit more about you besides your name, just like where you're kind of like calling in from, your job title, and anything else that you'd like to share. So what I'll do is I'll just call on you and I'll ask you to unmute your microphone. And if you feel like putting your camera on, that would be great. And if not, that's fine too. And then just please introduce yourself. So Benjamin, you're first on my list. So would you mind introducing yourself? Benjamin, I don't know if you can hear me. All right. Okay, there you go.
Hi, there we go. Sorry, I started speaking. I unmuted my phone, but not the app.
So. All right, no problem. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Also, I'm not flipping on my camera because I'm at my desktop computer in my office and I don't have a webcam on it. So, I work with data already, but not necessarily the big data. I already work with a lot of data science people, so I wanted to take into this program just to sort of be able to better understand what they do and to be able to work on parts of it myself and better provide the output to my clients. I work for NBC and I work in audience measurement research and everything, which is a rapidly expanding data set these days of all the different ways that people can watch our programming.
Oh, that's great. Where are you calling in from?
From Manhattan, from
all right.
Midtown, Rockefeller Center.
Awesome. Well, nice to meet you, Benjamin. Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome. Christian, would you mind introducing yourself?
Hi, everyone. I similarly won't flip on my webcam. I generally don't consider myself IT challenged, but for some reason I can't figure out how to turn the damn thing on. I'm calling in from lovely Johannesburg, South Africa today. Although I'm not originally from here, but I live here at the moment. It's a bit difficult to describe what I do. In short, I work with two startups at the moment. One is a fintech one, the other one completely unrelated in the coal, as in physical coal space. I just believe that understanding what you can and can't do with data and understanding the power of these new technologies that sort of have come, I guess, into their full over the last 5 to 7 years is hugely important. And that's why I'm here.
Great. Well, welcome, Christian. What time is it in South Africa and what day?
It is 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Great. Thank you. Faith, would you mind introducing yourself?
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Faith. I'm calling in from Nigeria, Port Harcourt. It's about 3 p.m. here.
Another African.
Yeah. So I have a HR background. I've done HR for a couple of years. Presently, I manage manpower planning, which requires me to work with a lot of data, people data, a lot of forecasting, a lot of what we're going to need in the future and all that. Apart from that, I mean, I work with Total, which is an energy company. So we're more looking forward to the best way to improve on our energy practices. Apart from that, I'm also an entrepreneur. I have a restaurant, a couple of restaurants, and then I generate data from customers, try to know what they want, try to think about how to make it happen, how to get better service and all that. So I'm really interested in this course because I would like to know more about new trends in analytics, what I can do with the data I have, how I can also preempt a lot of information and change too.
Terrific, terrific. Well, welcome. Thank you, Faith. Next up, we have Janice.
Hi, this is Janice. Can you hear me?
We can. You're a little muffled, but we can kind of hear you.
Okay, well,
That's better. Yep.
Okay, right. So I am Global Director of Commercial Excellence at Abbott, Point of Care Division in Princeton, New Jersey. I'm originally from Jamaica. I work a lot in terms of insights and analytics. So I do have data scientists on my team, and I've also worked across some of the areas that will be touched on, throughout this program, like digital analytics. So for me, I wanted to become more knowledgeable and a little bit more, at least understand what they're doing, so that at least I can provide, greater guidance. And also be able just to utilize the data scientist team, a lot more effectively.
Wonderful. Well, welcome. Next, we have Jose.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Kristen.
Hi.
Well, I am Jose. I am originally from Colombia, but I live in Sydney. So at the moment it's 1 in the morning here in Sydney.
Oh my goodness. Thank you for joining us so late.
So I start my Saturday with art, which is good. Well, to tell you a little bit about myself, I work as an independent consultant for Bain & Company. Here in Sydney. I work as a consultant in analytics. So previous to this master's, I did a postgraduate certificate in data science with the University Technology of Sydney. And now, I want to apply what I learned to businesses. So this is the reason why I'm here.
Wonderful. Well, Jose, thank you. And thank you for joining us so early in the morning. In New York, it's close to 10 a.m. So, okay, next up we have Lee.
Oh, hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
We can. Welcome.
Oh, hi. I am Li Yuan. So that's my is my first name. I am from Singapore, and it's 10 p.m. right here in Singapore. Currently working in a tech company as a policy strategy. So what my team does is to reduce fraud. I look into fraud and risk, and I specialize in payments risk. And before that, I was working in consulting firms. So I'm here because I want to learn more. Want to learn how to use data and apply it to implementing it on policy. How do I use data to better create policies for the team, and how to better strategize business decisions for the team. Yep, that's it.
Okay, wonderful. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. And what time is it in Singapore?
10 p.m. right here.
10 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Next, we have Mariana.
Yes. Hi, everyone. This is Mariana Fanous. I am calling in from downtown Manhattan. I work at Goldman Sachs, covering finance and risk divisions, specifically the CFO function. So that includes financial planning and analysis, financial reporting, and a big project of mine is looking at allocations, which is incurred costs coming into the finance and risk divisions, and also allocations out, which are forfeited costs from the finance and risk divisions out to the revenue producing divisions. A lot of my role consists of Excel and a lot of data and a lot of forecasting of data. And I'd like to be able to utilize better methods to enable me to make smarter decisions at work.
Wonderful, wonderful. Welcome, Mariana.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Mehdi.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can. Welcome.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, my name is Mehdi. I work in Princeton, New Jersey, very close to Janice. Meyer Squibb. I'm a manager for the marketing procurement department. So looking to, what I'm looking to learn from this course is, I truly believe data science and, using it in business is the future of, kind of the economy. So, I just kind of want to get ahead of the curve and learn something new and, be ready when, this is basically like leading the world. So
that's awesome to skill up. I love that. Welcome. Thank you. Next, we have Mike.
Okay, thank you. Well, I am calling in from Kansas City, and I have plenty of cowpoke jokes. I'll save those for another time. I've been an entrepreneur most of my professional career. I have founded and built and sold a couple of different companies. One of those companies was a data analytics company that I sold back in 2011. And since then, I've been doing seed investing and just general counsel with business startups. But one of the things I've seen since I sold that analytics business in 2011 is there's been about 2 turns in intelligent technologies, which would include on the data side and on the analytics side with the data lakes, Apache Spark, Hadoop, and when you get into a lot of machine learning and deep learning, I've just seen so many different applications that I can no longer fake it. I like to tell people. So that's why I'm actually enrolled in this course and into this program, is really to get a formal education in data science and decision science. And I think we're just at a unique intersection where we're at today with the explosion of data collection and the intelligent technologies, along with business velocity, which just continues to increase year over year. And I think a lot of C-suites and companies are really wrestling with what does this mean for us to be competitive, to continue to grow, and be profitable? How are we going to engage our data assets? And so just being able to consult with those companies, I just felt inadequate, and I've lost several steps since I sold that business in 2011. So I am very much looking forward to this opportunity to learn alongside and learn from each of you and certainly the great faculty at NYU. So I'm very blessed to be here.
Well, thank you, Mike. Welcome, welcome. Next, we have Neo. We can't quite hear you. I see your microphone's on, Neo, but no audio right now. Okay, so what we'll do is if you want to introduce yourself in the text chat, that would be great, and then we'll come back and see if you have your mic working. Thank you. So next we have Philip.
Hi, can all of you hear me?
We can, welcome.
Hi, my name is Philip. I'm from the sunny island of Singapore. I'm a program manager with Citibank. I've been with Citibank for more than 20 years. I manage a pool of projects manager and a portfolio of technology projects. While I'm here, I want to upgrade myself with new skills, especially ones that allows me to make decisions largely with data in this new industry 4.0. And I believe there's many more jobs in the futures that are involving data. That's why I'm here. Thank you.
Wonderful, Philip. Well, welcome, welcome. I'm going to return back to Neo and see if you have your audio working. All right, I don't hear anything, but just go ahead and introduce yourself in the text chat, and then once you get it working, no problem. Once you get it working, just we'll take a moment. We want to hear about you. So, okay, great. So Neo is going to chat. While he is doing that, I am going to just kind of reflect on the amazing backgrounds of just a small sample of the MSBA program that's in this class. I met 20 other of your colleagues, students, peers last evening, and they also came from incredible backgrounds. But it was very interesting. A lot of the concentration was in North America. A few people from Europe joined the session, but here we have people joining from 5 continents. Asia, Australia, Africa, North America, and South America. That's pretty amazing. In just a small sample of, 8 people who responded to the survey, but I think there's maybe 10 people here. So, and from such incredible backgrounds and experience. And so that's the beauty of this program is that I think, like Mike was saying, like learning from each other and then also from, not just from the faculty, but really from each other is going to be a huge value add for everyone. So again, as we go on, feel free to ask questions, use your mic, raise your hand to speak up, and I'll call on you if you want to use your mic. We'd rather hear from you in words, but if you want to use a text chat, please feel free to do that as well. There's always kind of questions on the structure of the course, and I just want to clarify. So the idea is that I want to make sure everybody learns R before you start your work on the statistics portion of this course. So I put together a suggested schedule. Everything for the entire course that's pre-module is due on May 17th. These deadlines are here to help you be prepared for when you join an online session. And quite honestly, to allow you to have consistent practice throughout the next month or so. So the course started on Monday, and the idea is that between Monday and next Monday that you're going to complete lessons 1 and 2. Sign up for a web meeting. All of you have done that. You're here, and then by next Monday or so, it'd be great if you completed assignments 1 and 2, because then you can start jumping into lessons 3 and 4, attending the web meeting next week, and then thereafter completing assignments 3 and 4. So, Mehdi, I would recommend waiting to complete the assignments before you join the web meeting, just because you may want to. But I would say it's up to you. The web meetings are there to really support you in your learning. If you don't have questions and if you feel the material straightforward, go ahead and submit it. There's really no reason to hold off. All of it is supposed to be positive. The assignments are meant for you to do well in. They're not necessarily meant to be tricky or punitive. They're meant to be supportive and demonstrate to the teaching team, myself, Peter, and Toby Pank, who is our teaching fellow for the R portion of the course, just your progress. So it would be my dream if everybody was, doing perfectly on those assignments. So again, the idea is that it's not supposed to be punitive. So I hope that, Mehdi, does that answer? Is that clear? Oops.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. So just back here. All right. So we also just want to pause for a second because Neo, who is from Taiwan, has introduced and coming from Foxcom, and I just direct everybody's attention to the text chat. Wonderful, Neo. Thank you for introducing yourself. We're happy to have you here. Mehdi, you said you have some questions.
Yes. So I don't want to bombard you, but I assume we're just going to dive into it for lessons 1 and 2.
Yeah. So the agenda is that I'm going to do a small mini lecture to describe some of the basic principles of R, and I'm going to ask you to do some exercises at the same time.
Okay, awesome. This question is more general about the format.
Sure.
I noticed that there was content on using R in lesson 1 and 2 that was a bit different from the videos, and even the exercises themselves, sometimes reference stuff from the videos and not from the written content. I'm curious, for us, for our learning, and for any future exams or anything like that, what would you say is the source of truth when it comes to what we need to know? Because I just want to make sure, is it everything that I need to know, or should I focus on just the exercises and get really comfortable with those? So just curious on your feedback.
Okay, so what I've done is in my NYU classes, I brought up the lessons, and it says materials for the R section of this course. And if you go to the overview, so this is where you start, you watch the video, and then there's text that describes, the format of the course and how it's organized. Things that we talked about already, and encouraging you to sign up for the live online sessions. And going back to lessons, if I jump into lecture 1, the idea is that you'd start with this kind of warm up that would talk a little bit about working in our studio. And then I would ask you to complete this tutorial. This tutorial would then take you to this website that I created that is organized around these 9 points. You've already watched this video. So now you can jump in and use this guide and follow along with it. So I would suggest that you have RStudio open and you actually literally type in 2 + 7 in the console window, look for the output and follow along. And as you progress, the idea is for you to complete the entire lesson. And then come the exercises. So I'm going to pause here. I'm going to go back to NYU classes. And then you'll see that I did a code walkthrough for exercise 1.1. That refers to what we're looking at here. So the idea is complete this exercise, and then you can see the code walkthrough, which is the solution. I prefer you to complete it and then look at the solution for exercise 1.1. Going back to NYU classes, it will tell you the next step. Complete assignment 1. And so if you go down, you'll see, oh, there's an exercise 1.2. Well, that's what we'll do. We'll do some of that today. But assignment 1 is what you turn in, okay? And at this point, what this middle part represents, 1.2, is kind of what we're doing today. So this is pretty much the content, and it's all the same. Some things are I talk about different things, of course, in different sections. But is that clear? Does that make sense as an approach?
Yeah, I mean, it's very clearly written out. I think you did a great job with writing this content, and those videos, they're all super helpful. I can speak specifically to in lesson 2. where there was a section about creating subsets, and that came up in the video but didn't come up in the written content. And you know, if I follow the logic of, you know, doing the exercise and then reading the video, I kind of get stuck on that exercise question. But
Okay.
we can get to that point. We can, you know, dive into it more.
So what I would say,
very clear.
okay. What I would say here is that I'm just scrolling through right now, but there are times where I may introduce kind of like a little bit of a new concept more to kind of extend the learning. But it's not supposed to be every, you know, like obviously like today I'll introduce something that might not be written in the lesson. So the idea is that, you know, everything is an extension. So like when I feel confident that people have a strong foundation, then I'll say, okay, let's look at something different. And so that's really the idea here. Okay. So you will be doing more subsetting as you go further on in the lessons. So it's kind of a preview of what's to come, if that makes sense. Okay. So I guess, you know, to kind of verify, it will be written down in the tutorial, but probably if it wasn't in that lesson, I was just probably providing a little bit of a preview of that content, but it will be written down in further lessons. All right, good. That's great. Want to make sure this stuff is clear. So that's a great question, and also gave me an opportunity to kind of review the format. Other questions on this? All right, so if there isn't, I would just suggest that right now that you open RStudio up. And so hopefully by this point, most people have R installed and then RStudio. And if you go to the materials here, you'll see exercise 1.2 and 2.2. These are exercises that if we don't get to do in this session now, that I encourage you to do more as practice, as kind of a direct follow-up to what we learned today. And if possible, if you can work kind of side by side. This is the wrong screenshot, I apologize, but with RStudio and the content that we'll be going over. We're not there yet. What I suggest really is that you have RStudio open and you use the console right here, and you type your answers in the text chat as we go along. So the idea is I'm going to say, okay, you try it, and then type in your answer in the text chat. And not everybody will have the same answer. It's not that people will have wrong answers. People will just code it differently. Coding is, you know, there's an art to it, and there's different ways that you can approach and solve the problem and get the right solution, but there are different ways that you can solve it. So as a review, here we're looking at the RStudio interface. Yours may look, you know, slightly different. You have the ability to arrange where these panels are. This panel here is known as the console window. This greater than sign represents what we call the cursor in the console. This is where we're going to begin with our coding. We're using R as a calculator. And we're going to use many similar functions that we can use in a calculator, but we have to do them differently, and the implementation is different. And so the idea is that let's all start, even if we're new to coding, with something that's familiar. And so we know how to use a calculator. And we're going to start by just typing simple commands at the command prompt and pressing the enter key. And so the idea is that this is our command prompt. This is our input. So we're typing 3 plus 2, and our output is 5. If our input is 100 divided by 5, our output is 20. So it does the computation, right? Our input is 12 plus 12 plus 12, and our output is 36, which does the arithmetic for us, just like a calculator would. Does anybody know what this 1 refers to in brackets? You can speak up on the text chat or...
Is that every time?
Oh, okay. So if you raise your hand, that would be great, just so we don't talk over each other. Somebody said the line number or something. First element of the output vector. Okay, we're getting close. So this is the first line of output. Okay, so If I was, say, viewing all data in a data set, and that data set would be many, many lines, right? And so that would be numbered accordingly. So the output here for 3 plus 2, we only have one line of data, right? It's just going to be 5. Good old 5, right? We're not going to have multiple lines. If we did have multiple lines of output, like it, we had like a wrapping, it was a series of numbers, it would tell us the different lines of output. Just allows for easy reference. But just so you know what that means, okay? Great. And so in R, we start by using basic arithmetic operators. These should look very familiar: addition, subtraction, division, multiplication. For exponents and powers, we use the caret here. And something that you might not have seen in coding before is the modulus, which is the remainder from division, if you ever need to know what that number is. We use a double percent sign for that. So those are basic, what we call arithmetic operators. Now let's get to this idea of variables. So there's this notion of something called a variable assignment. And so this is where I am taking the value of 3 and I'm assigning it to a variable that I've named x. And I'm assigning it using this special operator, which looks like this less than sign and a minus sign. Okay, so for those of you who've coded in any other language, you probably use something different for assignment. What would you use for assignment in, Java or C or virtually any other programming language? Equals. Yes.
Equal.
So this is going to be the hardest part of transitioning to R, is that you don't use the equal sign. You can, but let me just talk through it. So this is the name of our variable, this is our assignment operator, and this is the variable, the value that we want to reference in the variable x. Okay. So now that if we ever want to update x, we can easily update it rather than having a hard-coded value in our data like 3, for instance. We can also use the equals operator to do assignment. This does not mean that x equals 3. This means that the value of 3 is assigned to the variable x, just in the same example I used before. It's just a different operator. It is valid in R, but I encourage you to use the operator that I showed before, this operator, because when you look at the documentation for R, every R coder uses this assignment operator, okay? But you'll see in some of Peter's materials, he uses the equal sign. So they mean the same thing. So now I'd like you to try it. I'd like you to assign the value of 42 to a variable named y. Go ahead and do that in the console window and type in your result in the text chat. In the meanwhile, I heard somebody peep in for a question. I'll take the question.
Oh, yeah. Now, or do you have?
Yeah, please, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Could you do it the other way, where it would be, well, like, for example, for what you have on the screen now, could you do 42 dash right?
Yeah, you could do it the other way. You could do assignment. Assignment works on either side of the operator. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thanks.
But you have to invert the operator, right? I think that's what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. Mm-hmm. No problem. But generally, when we do assignment, the value that's being assigned to the variable, it tends to be on the right-hand side, and the variable that is being created at the same time it's being assigned is on the left-hand side. So most people did this. Wonderful. And if we want to access that value, we can just simply type y at the command prompt, and then we can see that the value referenced in y is 42. So you can go ahead and do that. I see I've seen another hand up. Mariana, did you have a question?
Oh, sorry, that was my question. Let me put my hand down.
Okay, no problem. Good. And so here's a further example. And so here, now that we have the variable y, we know, because we haven't closed our R session. So in memory, y still is referencing the value of 42. If we add 2 to it, here we just get the value, get 42. At this point in the code, don't look further, what's the value of y? Type it in the text chat. Good, it's 42. It's not 44 because while we've added 2 to y, we haven't, if we typed y again, we'd still get 42. Okay? Why? Because we haven't updated the variable. We'll talk about variable reassignment and updating variables, okay? All we've done is just do a calculation on y, but we haven't updated the value, okay? And you can prove that out by just typing y right now, and you'll see that it will still be 42. If you say y plus 2, you'll get 44, but y will still be 42. Oh, but Jose is telling us how to update the variable. Look at it in the text chat. Right. So we can say y plus 2 and then reassign that value to y. And we'll do that momentarily. Let's look at this example going further. So now we can also raise y to the second power, right? So now we're using the exponents function, or operator, and we get our output. So here's how we update a variable like Jose taught us. I have a different example here. So we know that y is referencing 42. We did that before. And we can subtract 1 from y minus 1, and then reassign it back to itself. And now if we show the output of y, we get 41. Now, to show the output, I just said, oh, you could just type in the letter y. Or you can use what we're calling a function called print and pass in the variable or the data or whatever it is that you want to print out. Okay, there's a couple ways to do things. Questions so far?
Does the spacing matter?
One question.
Does the spacing matter? Let's do that one. Not so much, no.
Okay, thank you.
It does seem though that it's case sensitive, right? Like if you do a capital P in print or capital Y, it won't work.
Exactly, case sensitive. Yes. Just like if you're writing a letter to somebody, right? Like there's a certain like grammar and syntax and everything that you follow when you write a letter. Like you capitalize the first letter of a sentence, right? But you don't capitalize every letter. And there's certain proper nouns that you capitalize and the ones that you don't. Well, there's the same thing that in R. And so you'll learn what those are along the way. But you have to know that the print function is lowercase p. Most functions, we'll go over this, are lowercase. There's very few that are uppercase. So this is a little task for you. Assign the value of 42 to the variable y, and then assign that value to x. And then I'll take the next question. I'm sorry, I don't know who that was. Was that Mariana? I'm sorry.
Yes. I was wondering, when you're getting to like a complex code and you have like multiple variables that you've assigned values to, before you run the code, is there a way to like sub-run a code to remember what all of the values are assigned to the variables? Or do you just have to like have a side note where you have to like list to yourself what you've assigned?
Okay. I'll show you an example in a minute, okay? I think that will be clarifying. Yep. So let's go over this one. So here what we're doing is we're assigning the value of 42 to the variable y, then assigning that value to x. So we see that people have solved this already, right? So this is called variable reassignment. Okay, so now I can not just update variables, but I can reassign the values of reference and variables to other variables, okay? I'm going to just go over one more thing, and then I want to get to Mariana's question about how we actually, how we can see what's referenced in other variables. And we can do that when we look at our RStudio interface, and I'll show you how to do that. But let's just go over one concept here, which is about the type. So variables can be of different types. Okay, so you can picture that, your first name, if your first name was stored in a variable X, that would be considered something like a character, right? A character string. It's a word, right? Versus, maybe your salary. That might be a float, right? So your salary may not be a positive integer. It might be a decimal, right? Versus, oh, excuse me, mouse went crazy. Versus an integer, which might be something like, your age or something. So this would be integers are positive or negative whole numbers, floats are positive, negative decimals. What we're looking at here is an integer vector. So I can not only store a single value in a variable of of type numeric, I could also store a set of values, okay? And a vector is, you could think about it as a column in Excel. It's just a column of data of all the same type, okay? A column of data is a vector. Once we have two vectors next to each other, like in Excel, then we have something called a data frame, which is a different type of data structure. But here we're just working with vectors right now, single columns. So an integer vector, this is a vector of length 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, of length 6. Okay, that means it has 6 values. When we count in R, for those of you who've coded in other languages, we don't start at 0, we start at 1. Okay, so this is position 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So that's another small change in terms of differences. There are other types of variables like Boolean. So these are Boolean, when you have a variable that's of type Boolean or data that's of type Boolean, it can only have one of two values, that's being true or false. And we'll look at some cases of that. So we might want to ask the question, does X equal Y? And if we ask that question, and I would ask it like this, does X double equal sign Y? We'd either get a value of true or false. And based on Mariana's code, what do you think that we see before, right above what I have in the text chat? What do you think the output would be of the statement I just typed? Yeah, true. Okay, so that's just a simple example of how Boolean logic works. And then we can also have different types of vectors. I mentioned the integer vector, and there's character vectors and many more. All characters have to have double quotes around them. Okay? So I'm just going to escape out of here quickly and go to my RStudio window. This is my RStudio interface. It's going to look a little different than yours. What you see here is the command prompt, and so I think we did something like x equals 42, and then maybe we'll just say y equals 42, just to have some variables. Right now, I'm going to go to my environment here, and you should see some values. X is 42, y is 42, exactly what's here. Okay. And this is, Marianne, to answer your question, anytime I'm creating variables, you'll see them pop up in the global environment here. Okay, so that's how you know. So I hope that's useful.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, totally. Good question. There are ways that we can interrogate our data. Now you're saying, well, I kind of can figure out if my data is numeric or character or maybe even logical. You kind of told me what those things are. It's easy to figure out. Well, sometimes we don't actually get to look at our data in the way we just did moments earlier, right? So we have to interrogate it. And we interrogate it by asking it questions. We ask it questions to see whether or not our data is numeric or character or logical or integer and so on. So if I said something like, let's go back to my R console, is dot character, and we know that, and then I pass in the y. What do you think will be returned when I press enter?
False.
False, right. But if I say something like is numeric, that's true, okay? And so you could always evaluate a variable to figure out what it is. Another way that you can figure out the data type of a variable is to use a function called class. Okay? So if I said something like name, and I put in my first name, so now we know name is a variable assigned to my first name. By the way, you can call me by my first name. And you could say class name. It'll return that it's of type character. So that's how a couple ways that we can figure out the data types of our variables. Very important to be able to do this. Why? Well, let's say we want to do some math. And if we want to do some math, we want to make sure that our variables are of type numeric, that we can actually do calculations on them and use those arithmetic operators that I introduced earlier. Sometimes we have data that we bring in from, a data set. We don't know where we got that data set from, or it's an old, data set, and everything comes in and everything's a character. Everything has double quotes around it, right? So you get a file that looks like this. I'm just typing in the text chat, okay? lots of look kind of messy looking, and every number has double quotes around it. Well, when a number has double quotes around it, it's considered a character. Let's look at this in the console here. So here I'm just pointing to the console. I'm the last line here. I'm pressing Control L just to clear my console, just so you can see full screen. And so say if I have a value and I might say something like price, and then if I use double quotes, I say something like let's just say 2. Price is 2. And then if I want to see what that type of data type that is, I'd say class price. It's a character. But what if I wanted to say price plus 2? What do you think will happen?
False.
No, I can't use an arithmetic operator, right, on a character. I have to use arithmetic operators on data that is of type numeric or integer or float, okay? So what do? Well, price looks like a number, but it has these messy double quotes around it. How do I get rid of that? And it's actually quite simple. What we do is we do something called casting a variable, okay? Bringing back the PowerPoint. There are these functions in the right-hand column to create or cast a variable, to make a data that's, say, of type character to, say, numeric, if it's possible to do so. So we know that price, since it has 2, it's a value of 2, we can change that to be of type numeric. Get rid of those kind of double quotes around it. So here we would do something like price as dot numeric, and we pass in price. Now you see the double quotes are removed around that. And now I can say price plus 3. Good. Thank you for those of typing in the text chat responding. Yeah. Okay. And so that's really what you're seeing on this screen. These are a set of functions that allow us to figure out what type to check to see if we have the data type that we need, and if not, to possibly convert it. We can't always convert it, but there are times that we can in the example that I've shown. Okay, we're not going to be able to convert the value of 2 to a logical, or the name Kristen to a numeric. Okay, obviously there are some ways that we can work through reorganizing our data. So if we had like survey data, everything from like, how well did you enjoy this R session today? Like very well to, hated it. You could order that on a scale, right? And so you'd have that on a scale, and then you could have words associated with numbers, and that's where we use factor variables, which we will get into. But just to give you a little preview on that, let's go over this example. This is just a small code walkthrough. Again, these greater than signs represent the command prompt. So when we use the class function, this tells us the data type of a variable. In this case, class X. X is a numeric. We're creating a new variable here called Z. We're assigning it the value of 1.2. We check the class of that, and it's numeric. So most in R, I would say most of the time, when you create a variable that is a number, it will be of type, the most generic type will be used, numeric, okay, unless you specify. And there's not any really reason to specify. Numeric is a generic data type for any kind of values that have strictly numbers in them, including integers and floating points, decimals. I'm creating a variable called B, assigning it the value of book, which is a character. I could type in the letter B, and I see the output, which is what's referenced in the variable, and I can also find out that data type by using class B. Okay, this is just kind of a simple example. I spoke about vectors. So in addition to storing a single value in a variable, say X, we can store an array of values of the same type in a variable. And we do that in a few simple steps. First, within parentheses, we type in the values that we want to store. So again, a vector is just like a column of data. So type in a bunch of values, If they're numbers, no double quotes around them. If they're, words, you want to put double quotes around them. And then we use the C function. Does anybody know what the C function stands for? Combine. Very good. Very good. What would you do if you didn't know what the C function meant? Google it. Both are good. So at the command prompt, I use $C, and in our documentation shows up within our studio. You don't even have to go to Google, and you can learn about what this function does. And look, it gives a nice description. Combines values into a vector or a list. Wonderful. And then we can see, there might be some things that we don't immediately understand, and that's completely fine. We want to see what the function means, and we scroll down and we look at some examples. Okay? And then you can try these examples out. This is how the documentation in R works. It's great. So let's go back to here. So first I'm going to create a vector. Okay, this vector has 6 values, and I'm using the combine function. I assign it to x. I add x plus 2. This is pretty cool, right? Because I'm adding the value of 2 to each element in the vector. So you can see it's almost like doing 2 plus 1, 3, 2 plus 2, 4, and so on. So you can try that out. So I would like you to create a vector called months with the integers 1 through 12 and square that vector. When you have the answer, please type it in the text chat. Mike, I think you just shared everything. You're working on the sidewalk exercise, I see. Cool. Good. Great work. So here's a few ways you can do it. And you'll notice I recommend that you look at how other people have solved this. So first, let's look at line 1. Use the combine function. You pass in values 1 through 12. You assign that to months. Okay? Or a shortcut is you can just say 1 colon through 12. This means that it's basically a shortcut, and this is where to say, take the values 1 through 12 and then assign them to the variable months, and then square that vector. So there's 2 different ways you could have done this part of the problem, and then squaring it. Good. So let's do one more. So create a vector called days with the days Monday through Wednesday. Great. And so the point here is that you could take a look at what other people have written, is to use the double quotes, right, around the make sure that you're creating a character vector. Great. So you see that we've been using some functions throughout, the combine function. What other functions have we used? I've used the word a lot, but haven't defined it for you. Do we use any other functions today? We use the C function. Print, yeah. We've used some others. Class as numeric. So basically, functions generally return some value or take some parameter and manipulate the object or entity that we are passing into it. In this case, taking the square root of 25, which is a value that we're passing in, returning the square root, computing the mean of a vector. So this is a two-step function. So first, I'm using the C function. We read inside out with the parentheses in coding. So we're going to create a vector of length 5 with values 1 through 5, and then we're going to pass that in to the function called mean, okay? And then we're going to get the mean of that. Oops. If we want to take this string hello world and convert it to uppercase, we can simply pass in that and it will convert it to uppercase. When I had that example, Mariana, that pound alt, that was a comment. So let's look at what comments do. So I could say something like price equals 4, and then here I can say new price. And that's just, anytime I use the pound sign, that's just like words that I write in to note what I'm doing. It doesn't get computed.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. And when we start writing scripts, we're going to use comments a lot to describe and document what we're doing. Back here, good question. So we're going to, we have like almost 15 minutes, so I'd like us to open up exercise 1.2. And we can do this together. You can find exercise 1.2 conveniently linked for you under the materials turnbuckle in the Go to Training control panel. And it says exercise 1.2. You click on that and it will bring this up. So this is what we're working on. And I'm going to bring it up in a different format so we can all see it together in my R console. And all right, so R is a pretty interesting, it's not just a programming language, but I can actually create like slides in R. So these are all, I built these all in R. The entire tutorial that you go through for this course was all built in R in a package called R, not just R Markdown, but something called Bookdown. And so that's why when you go through the tutorials that I put together, everything, all the code is written as if it was code, so you can easily distinguish it. So R is very, very powerful, lots of different packages. And so we're going to go through exercise 1.2. And I'm going to ask that you follow along and try to complete them. So let's start with the first problem. So it says, oops, let's refresh this. It says compute the following. So how would I do that in R?
You want us to type or talk?
You can type if you want. That's good. Yeah, so you can literally highlight it and paste it in and press enter and get the result. Okay, so that's you know, R just follows the standard order of operations, and so that's the most important thing that I wanted to illustrate with this problem. Okay, so now I'd like you to round the square root of 50 to the 4th decimal place. How would we do that? Try that problem out. Good. So we see a lot of answers here, and I'll go through it slowly. So first, we need to take the square root, right? And then we know that there's a square root function, so the square root of 50. And so we can do that first, or we can combine this function within another function, within the round function. So we can say round pass in the square root, right? And there we have, we're passing in the square root function to the round function. So whatever the square root of 50 is going to be rounded, right, to how many decimal places? Well, we can specify this as the second parameter in the round function to, I think we said 4, okay? And so this is what everybody's gotten as the result. Okay, so this is to illustrate passing in a function within a function. And if you're curious, well, how does the round function work? Well, question mark round. Here, we'll see in the help documentation, the rounding of numbers. And it will just give us some basic information, and then we can scroll down to see some examples. And sometimes the examples are a little esoteric, so you take it with a grain of salt. And if you can't understand the documentation, then you just Google it and ask your question in English. Good, Philip, Mike, thank you for your participation. And Sim, Jose, awesome. Let's move on to the next problem. Okay, so assign a variable customers to 500 and assign the variable pizza price to 20. Let's do that one. When you have your solution, you can type it in. All right, this is just variable assignment, right? So we have customers, and it depends how you want to name your variables, but customers is a good name, very descriptive. So assign that to 500, and then we have pizza underscore price. I'll give that a value of 20. Good. So let's go on. So now then part C is assign the variable today's revenue to the product of customers times pizza price. Okay, so we've done that. I'm going to go ahead and bring up my environment window just so now you can start seeing all the variables I've created today. Go back to my presentation. Mehdi, quick question. Yes.
Hey, so I remember in the beginning you said there was a way to assign a variable value without, by using the equal sign. And you said, it's not normal practice, but I was wondering how you do it.
Oh, sure. So let's just take the variable x, give it a value of 4. That's it.
Oh, wow. Okay, cool.
Yeah, so this is much different than, this equation. So, if we know x is 4, we know y is 42, and we ask the question, does x double equals y? We're asking, are these two values equal that are referencing these variables? But if we just want to assign a value to a variable, we can use the equal sign, like so. Good question. I'm glad you asked it. Okay, so let's go to the next one. Show the code that would answer the following question. Is the revenue today greater than yesterday's revenue of 7,000 and less than tomorrow's projected revenue of 11,000? When you have this answer, please bring that up. Okay, some good answers. Jose, Use the AND operator here. Wonderful. Okay, so I mean, what we want to do is we want to first look at the statements that we're evaluating. Okay, put those in parentheses. Today's revenue is greater than is, this is in parentheses, how we read this is it says today's revenue greater than 7,000. Okay, that's going to return what? Either a true or false, okay, because we're using what's called a Boolean operator and Boolean operators, when we use them, only return true or false. So this, and then we're saying, and is today's revenue less than $11,000? So both these conditions need to be true in order for the entire statement to be true. If one is false, false will be returned. Does that make sense? And this is where you use the ampersand. If we wanted to say or, would that give us a different answer? And how would we say or?
Pipe.
Yeah, the pipe, which is right below the delete key. That also gives us the answer of true. But the question, trying to answer the question, we of course need to use the AND operator, given the way that the problem is formed. Good, nice work, nice work. Questions on this? So we're very close to the end of our session today. I would encourage you to go ahead and work through exercise 2.2. I'll just go over the problem. I want you to create a vector of different test scores and assign that vector to a variable called test scores. And then I want you to create a second vector called students with the following values and assign it the variable name of students. And then I want you to create a data frame called grades that brings in the two vectors together. Does anybody remember who went through the second lesson what function I would use? Yeah, data.frame. Okay, data.frame. I'm not saying cbind won't work, but there's a cbind is a function that's used to build matrices. Matrices are data structures that can only be of one data type. Here we're looking at data types that are two data types, numeric and characters. So we want to build a data frame. And I'm asking you to build a data frame. Okay. And then problem 2, it turns out Monica's test was regraded and she should be rewarded an extra 5 points. Make the correction in the data frame. Okay, so that's what I'd like you to work on. You don't have to turn that in, but just in terms of more problems to work on based on the work in assignment, in lesson number 2. So at this point, please let me know if you have questions. Feel free to raise your hand, ask them in the text chat. Feel free to reach out, email me. There's a discussion forum in NYU classes where you can ask questions. Oh, okay, so Jose's asking, how do we submit the assignment? Usually I'll specify how to submit it. You use the assignments in NYU classes. So let's look at NYU classes. You go to an assignment right here. You want to submit the first one. You click on it and you'll be able to submit it. I can't because I'm a faculty member. You'll be able to submit it from this thing. You can actually use inline or do an attachment for that because the output is very, just using R as a calculator. As we get more complex, I'm going to ask you to include your programs, which will be .rmd files. So I hope that's clear, Jose. Mehdi asks, what is a factor variable? When do we want to use a factor variable? So Mehdi, I spoke about that briefly, but I do go over that in some detail in lesson 2. So that a factor variable allows us to create what we call categorical variables, and variables in which we can have a, say, a value and a character string associated with it. So let's say we're talking about a Likert scale, and so in one variable I can have the value strongly agree, and I can also have 7. And have that reference of it. And I could switch between whether I want to present the data in text form, like strongly agree, or if I wanted to do math on it, I could reference the value of 7. So we'll talk about factor variables. They're very, very powerful because of this kind of dual assignment. We can order them, but go through lesson 2. It will definitely explain those and give you some practice in creating them. But for survey data is when we use factor variables, or we have categorical data that might be ordered. Great. So just looking, Yun Sim says there's a section of statistics. Will the later live sessions on the assignments cover this section? So yeah, I hope that's clear. In this course is split up into two faculty are teaching 2 different parts of the course. I teach the R portion. Peter teaches the statistics portion. And in the syllabus, you'll notice a nice schedule. And the online R programming section of the course, it describes all the web meetings. For session 1, you're going to sign up for one of these like you did. Session 2, one of these. Session 3, one of these. Then when you get to the statistics part of the course, you'll watch and follow along with Peter's lecture on population samples, and then you'll sign up for one of these meetings. I hope that's clear. Yes, thank you. All right. Well, thank you all for your time. I hope this session was useful. Please let me know. And good luck with your work. It was really great to meet all of you. And keep coding.